Okay, so now if I click on an attribute, right? So as you can see, when I clicked on blue, the color for color, the value was blue. Now, what if I click on white? See, when I click on white, a new attribute wasn't added to our state, but the current one was updated. So that's what we are doing here. We are creating an updated array and we are mapping over the attributes. So for each attribute, we are actually adding another condition, that is, if the attribute matches the same attribute we are trying to change, we just return a new object with the updated data. And if it doesn't match, we are just simply returning the attribute. That means it won't change anything. And if it already exists, right? So if it doesn't already exist, we are just simply like adding it to our attributes array. So yeah, also here we are not replacing it because the attribute array might already have some attributes. So that's why we are using the split operator. So it is a non-destructive way. Okay, so now we have our attributes. Now we can add some styling to our active attributes. So whichever attribute is active. So okay, now give it a class name. I have to make it a template string. Okay. And now how do I get the active attribute? So how do I know if this value already exists, right? In an attribute. So how do I do that? So for that, I can again check. So for that, I will just write a function here, another function. So const check value. So this one will take the same parameters, name. Okay, sorry. Uh, Name. Okay. So now what we can do is we can get the value of the attribute, right? So if we just send it like the value and the name, sorry, where is the function? Name and value. So first we have to check if the attribute even exists. So then we can get the value, right? So to do that, we'll do that again. I'll just take this one. Okay. So now if the attribute exists in our state, that means we already added it. So then we can say if it exists, then we can find it by the name, right? So now we can say we want to return like true or false inside our check value. So that in here, based on the true or false, that means the if the selected attribute and the value, the value of the selected attribute is this one, this value. So I'll just uh, like pass the attribute name and the value to that function, and that function will change that if that attribute the value of that attribute inside our state matches this value, like the attribute's value. So then if you find our attribute, if it exists, then we can say check again that if exists dot value is equals to our value, we can just return like true. That means yes, this value is selected, and else we can just return false, right? So now if I use this function to dynamically add some styles, I can come here and I can call that function with the attribute dot name and the value, and it will check if this value is the selected value right now for this attribute. So if it is true, then I want to add a new class, and let's name it active attribute. I'll just name it like that. Then Let's go back to our UI. Okay. Now here, what I can do is I can give it a bit different background color. Let's give it a bit dark. Okay, let's just check if it's working. Okay, okay, it is working. Okay, so it is working. Now we can change the color to color would be white. Okay. Mhm. Okay, let's increase the font size actually. Let's make it 20. Okay. All right. So after each of the attributes, we have a like a divider. So let's do that after each attribute. Okay. So after each attribute, like, so this is one attribute. So here I can say, okay, I'll just copy this one. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so we have that. Now for our activity, I can just say margin top 10 pixel and the other ones are all 0. Okay, does it work? Let's actually make it 20 or 15, I think. Okay, now that looks fine. Okay, so this is how our attributes are selected. Now I'm going to go over that again, how we rendered everything. So I'm taking an attribute class, right? So attribute class. So here I'm going to keep all the attributes as an array of object. So each object will have the attribute's name and the attribute's current value. So that is our state, right? So then how we render the attributes, we can say product type. It is a variant product. That means if it is a normal product, it won't have any attributes or any variations or anything. It will be simply the price will be the default one, the discounts will be the default one. So if it is a variant, we have some complexity. Then to handle that, we are mapping all the attributes so that the user can select them. And then I am rendering the attributes name, and also then with the values I am mapping over the values and rendering all the values in a card like these cards. So these cards are clickable. That means the user can select values for each attribute. So whenever the user clicks on that attribute, I'm calling this function. So it is taking the attribute name as and the value as parameters. And then first of all, I am checking if the attribute is already exists. That means if the user has already clicked on that attribute before, right? So if it exists, sorry, if it doesn't exist, I'm just simply setting up that attribute inside our state without destroying our previous state. I'm just simply using the spread operator to take everything from the previous state, and then I'm adding the name value, a new object for our currently clicked attribute. Okay, so that is if it doesn't exist. So what if it already exists? So if it exists, so I'm creating a new updated array from our current state, and I am saying attributes.map, and I'm taking each attribute, and for each attribute I am actually applying another condition that if the attribute name matches the current attribute we are trying to update or add. So if it matches, I am just updating that with our current name and value. And if it doesn't exist, I'm just returning the current attribute. That means when I'm not changing the object. So that is how our handle attribute click is working. And then to add some styling for our active attributes, what I'm doing is I am calling this function checkValue with the name and value as parameters. And then I am checking the same thing if it exists. And if it exists, then I'm checking if the value equals to the name. That means if I click if let's say for this value, I am saying that please check if for this attribute if this is the current value or the selected value. If it is, I'm adding it a different style or conditionally adding some styles. Okay.